While walking on the street, a handsome man is able to blow wind under a sexy woman's dress as he makes fun of her. He confronts some gangsters and makes a monkey come out of a man's bottom. The rest are scared by locusts being expelled from a man's mouth. Who is this man? How can he have such powers? Follow us today to a movie titled Bruce Almighty to find out all these answers. Be aware, there are spoilers. The movie starts in a bakery where Bruce Nolan, a news reporter from WKBW, tells a story about the biggest cookie to ever be made in Buffalo, New York. It is revealed to be a promising report that will help Bruce get a promotion. His girlfriend Grace helps him to choose the best thumbnail photo. They have fun enjoying their evening together. The next morning, Bruce drives Grace to school. Before she goes, Grace gives Bruce a prayer bead hoping it can help him bring luck. Later, he gets stuck in traffic and becomes late for work. When he gets to the company, he finds out that his reporting won't be aired. Instead, his rival Evan's story will be aired instead. After the meeting, Bruce speaks to his boss, Jack. Seeing his frustration, Jack gives him an assignment at Niagara Falls as a second chance. Unlike before, it is live, which has been something only Evan has ever been doing. Bruce is grateful and immediately heads to the falls. Before they go to his segment, it is revealed that the anchor job he was wishing for has been given to Evan while on live TV. Evan then plagiarizes Bruce's ending monologue from his earlier cookie story, narrating it as his own. Bruce freezes, then finally speaks, starting off with insulting Evan and the entire company. He has a mental breakdown on live TV. Bruce loses his job and is thrown out of the building after vandalizing it. On his way to the parking lot, he sees a homeless man being harassed by some thugs. Bruce tries to help the miserable man, leading the thugs to come back and beat him up. Returning home, Grace thanks God for Bruce being only slightly hurt. Bruce, however, mocks her, saying that God must be after him, for if God wanted to, he could fix his life in 5 minutes. Grace attempts to calm him down, but Bruce flips out. He hits her photo book, screaming he's not okay living a mediocre life. With that, he leaves the apartment in anger. Bruce goes for a night drive in desperation. He grabs the beads from earlier and holds them tight, begging to God for help, but ends up dropping the beads. As he retrieves them, the car slams into a pole. In anger, he throws the beads into Lake Erie and screams that God should be fired because he is not doing his job. It's at this moment his pager goes off, showing a number he doesn't recognize, so he ignores it. The next morning, the pager goes off again with the same number, so Bruce throws the pager out of the window. It breaks on a pole and gets run over. He finds a note from Grace saying that they need to talk. While standing outside with their dog Sam, he hears his broken pager ringing. Going to retrieve it, he calls the number. It sends him to a surprisingly personal voicemail offering him a job. Bruce heads to the place called Omnipresence and runs into a janitor who informs him where to go. Before Bruce leaves, the janitor asks if Bruce can help him mop the floors. On the 7th floor, he meets with an electrician who looks to be the same man. Having had enough of the prank, he decides to leave. It's at this moment the man reveals himself to be God. At first, Bruce is skeptical, but God draws a filing cabinet full of files about Bruce's pathetic life. God offers him his job, in which Bruce will represent God for a time. Unconvinced, he leaves the building. On the way, he asks his car to start, and it does. Then he sarcastically says he's Clint Eastwood, changing his reflection's personality and materializing a gun. He then goes to a diner to get some coffee, first wheeling sugar and creamer towards his hands, then spitting out a spoon. He finally starts to believe and uses his new powers to part his tomato soup like the Red Sea. God then materializes, spooking Bruce. Now Bruce believes in God, and the two begin to go over some of the rules. First, he cannot tell anyone he's God. Second, he cannot interfere with free will. Other than that, he can do anything he wants. He then notices that God has walked with him on Lake Erie, and God picks up the prayer beads he had thrown away earlier. God tells him he is going on a vacation and leaves the rest up to Bruce to handle. Bruce then goes about testing his powers. He sets off a fire hydrant, blows wind under a woman's dress, then materializes clothes onto himself. He also finds the thugs who had beaten him up previously and makes a monkey come out of the butt of a man. The thugs run away, but not before Bruce unleashes locusts on them. He then stands atop a building, proclaiming confidently his new powers as God. Later, he comes home happy, kissing Grace passionately. He then uses his new powers to charm Grace. He erases the clouds, pulls the moon closer to Earth, and creates new stars. He even gives Grace pleasure in varying degrees, and the night ends in bliss. The next morning, there are news reports about tidal shifts caused by Bruce's bringing the moon closer to Earth. Bruce is awakened to the sound of voices in his head. He's able to suppress them, and as Sam almost relieves himself in the house, he makes Sam pee in the toilet like a human. He then pulls Grace down for a kiss, eats breakfast, and leaves home to get his job back. He gets into his 280Z, revs the engine, and peels out in a new Celine S7. When he sees traffic, he forces all of the cars out of the way and speeds past them. He then arrives at a police dog training park. A rival station notices him and mocks him for his live mental breakdown, telling him there are no stories to cover there. Then one of the dogs starts digging and discovers the body of Jimmy Hoffa. The rival station crew tries to get their camera, but Bruce locks the doors and gets the exclusive. Then he gets the rival crew in a lot of trouble by making a ton of marijuana materialize in their car. With his exclusive, he returns to WKBW victorious and goes to talk with Jack, who offers him his job back. Bruce then uses his powers to generate more breaking news. He causes an asteroid to crash into Buffalo, earning him the title of Mr. Exclusive. While working to get Anchor, he sends Grace and her sister Debbie out for a spa day. Grace lets her know that later that night they have a reservation at a fancy restaurant. Debbie believes that Bruce is going to propose. Bruce, in the meantime, uses his powers, humiliating Evan on live TV. Later that night at the restaurant, Bruce and Grace are having dinner. Bruce then confesses that he can't wait any longer. He gets down on one knee and instead of proposing, he tells her that he got the anchor position. Grace is obviously disappointed but tries not to show it. Then the voices come back to Bruce, becoming so loud that he can't hear Grace. He exits the restaurant and closes his eyes. When he opens them, he has been transported to Mount Everest with God. Bruce asks what the voices are and God tells him those are prayers. In the week he has had powers, he has not helped anyone but himself. He then tells Bruce he should take the job a bit more seriously. Later, Bruce creates an organization system to answer the prayers. First with file cabinets, then sticky notes, then finally a website to answer them all. With over 1 million prayers unanswered, he tries typing yes to as many as he can. He comes to find he cannot answer them fast enough and decides instead to answer all with a yes. Bruce arrives at a party for his anchor position, but Grace isn't present. He calls her up begging her to come. Using his powers, he gets Sam to persuade her to come to the party. Bruce tries calling her again when Susan, his soon-to-be anchor partner, comes in and asks why he is all alone. She asks how their relationship is and then makes a move, kissing him. At that moment, Grace arrives at the party and sees them kissing. She leaves and tells Bruce they are finished. Bruce then ends the party by setting off all the sprinklers. He then finds out that over 1,100 people won the lottery due to him answering people's prayers with a yes. God then materializes and Bruce lets him know that Grace left him. Wondering if she will come back to him, God asks him if he would take her back under the same circumstances. He asks how he can force love onto someone without affecting free will, but God has no answer. At Debbie's house, Grace awakens to the alarm clock playing a message about forgiving Bruce. Then as she goes for a run, she sees Bruce plus Grace forever carved into the trees. More signs appear to her while she is working at the daycare. While she is tending to one of her children, Bruce shows up. He tells her he misses her and asks her to take him back. She, however, doesn't forgive him. He tries to override her free will, changing her mind. As he begs her to love him, she tells him she did and walks away. During his first anchor broadcast, there is news of a sports team winning a championship, the first time in 22 years, which sends the fans into a riot. He leaves his position and heads into the crowd, finding out that he can't handle the pressure and calls out for God. He then gets sent to Omnipresence, where God notes that he is right on time. It is 7 on the 7th. Bruce helps God clean the floors, saying he just tried to give everyone what they wanted. God lets him know that people never know what they want. People keep asking God to do everything for them, not realizing that they have the power. If people want miracles, they should become their own miracles. With the rest of his night, Bruce organizes the photo album that Grace has asked him for. The next day, rather than use God's powers, he helps people. First, moving a stalled car out of traffic, then pulling the plug on the prayer answering, then standing with the homeless man, and finally giving Evan the anchor position. He even trains Sam how to pee without using God's powers. While he celebrates getting Sam trained, Debbie comes back to gather Grace's stuff. Before she leaves, she informs him that each night before Grace sleeps, she prays for Bruce. Bruce then searches Grace's prayers and even finds she is currently praying. She asks God for strength to let Bruce go and move on without her. Heartbroken, Bruce walks down a highway in the rain, finally admitting defeat and surrendering to God, leaving God to choose his destiny. While he kneels in surrender, a truck comes and hits him, sending him into heaven. God lets him know that Bruce has a divine spark, the ability to bring joy to the world. With his last moments, God gives him the prayer beads back and asks Bruce to pray. At first, his prayers are grand, but finally prays for Grace to find happiness and to find someone that will love her as much as he does. God commends his prayer, then hits him in the chest not once but twice. The shock awakens Bruce and then he comes back to life on Earth. He awakens in a hospital with the doctor telling him someone in heaven must like him. He then notices the blood he is getting was donated by Grace. Grace then comes into the room examining him. She wanted to be upset with him, but seeing him hurt has changed her mind. As he embraces her, Bruce notices the prayer beads have been left in his hand. Sometime later, Bruce is doing a segment on blood donations, encouraging people to donate. He then introduces Grace, the soon-to-be Miss Exclusive. Ending his segment, he goes to donate blood. We then see the homeless man revealing himself to be God. Like and subscribe to watch more videos like this, and don't forget to turn on your notifications. That really helps my channel. Thanks for watching.